G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Mike Chastaine from Chastaine Jones. He's based in New Mexico, United States of America. Thanks for your time today, Mike.
Glad to be here, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. Daniel from Geffen Media's put a few guests to us and thought you'd be a great one to come on today.
Yeah, and he thought that this would be, I'd be able to provide some information that your listeners might be interested in considering.
I think so, based on your journey, which we're about to hear, and especially at the end, we'll dive into, because you sold out of your business about a year ago now. So I think that'll provide tremendous value for the audience too. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so I have been a practicing criminal defense lawyer for 37 years. I spent my first 17 years at the public defender, which the state provides defense for people charged with crimes under the U.S. Constitution. After that, I moved. That was in the Sacramento or the San Francisco Bay Area, out of San Jose. I moved to Sacramento, still in California, and joined another firm. Stayed with them about 6 years, and then in 2007 opened up Chastaine Law. And I was very good. I'm a very good lawyer. I've had a lot of success over the years. And I just thought that was going to translate into people knowing about me and showing up and giving me money and hiring me. But of course, it doesn't really work that way, even in the legal field. And so I struggled for a number of years, went through a couple different iterations of the firm with different employees. And I finally got to the point where I was by myself. I was doing everything myself and realizing that this wasn't working. I wasn't making any money. I was going broke. I was working my butt off, and decided to seek out and retain some mentors that really walked me through how to run a business. Outside of being a paper boy, I'd never actually really run a business before. And, within a few years, I started implementing the information that they were providing. I did a ton of reading and research of my own and turned it into a 8-person firm with, we were doing, more than 7 figures a year routinely. We were very successful. And at the end of last year, so the end of 2021, I sold it to another lawyer. Have stayed on what they call of counsel, so I still advise, but I don't actually handle any cases, or very, very little. And moved from Sacramento to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is where I am today.
Fantastic. And in 2007, when you started the firm, how old were you?
Oh, well, I was born in 1960, so I was 47 years old.
Great. Do you have any other key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 14 years that you had it? The number of full-time team members you started with and where you're at now?
So when I started the actual process of growing, as I say, I was literally by myself in an office. My later on wife became the office manager. She was very instrumental in helping, and the first hire outside of her was a bookkeeper, because I was spending so much of my time, tracking the books and all of that stuff. And I really hated it. What I realized is I freed up a lot of my time to actually bill for the work that I was good at, being a criminal defense lawyer. And then over a period of time, we wound up with 2 lawyers, a couple paralegals. We have a gentleman who lives in Mexico that actually crunches all our numbers. So I get a report every day of where the firm is, the status of everything, which is really critical because we run the law firm based on the data of our particular firm and what's working and what's not working. And those reports are critical in catching problems before they become real problems.
Yep, absolutely. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I mean, I've always enjoyed the journey, and I wasn't really clear on where I wanted to go. Um, I just wanted to keep becoming as financially viable as possible. I wanted to be in a position where, in a downturn, I knew we would be okay. And I think that moment came in, March of 20 when COVID hit, and I saw people just flailing about. We had about $100,000 sitting in just a savings account, just a rainy day fund, and because of that, we were able to survive the pandemic. Didn't have to borrow a penny, and then we're able to take advantage of while other people were panicking, as Warren Buffett says, when everybody else panics, that's when you need to consider buying. And so we really doubled down on a lot of our marketing and just working on how we were going to set up the firm so that when things started opening up again, we were just rocking and rolling even more strongly. So I would say that was when I knew that from a financial perspective, this business was doing very well.
What does success look like to you?
Well, it looks like my double adobe hacienda that I live in now. We have 10 acres. I don't have to worry on Monday morning. Monday morning for a trial lawyer like myself is always stressful because that's when trials get sent out. I don't have that concern anymore. I don't have an alarm clock. So I get to dictate my time. It's not that I don't have anything to do. It's just that, I don't have a ton of things to do. So I get to spend time riding my bike and skiing out here and really enjoying, just enjoying nature out here. New Mexico is beautiful.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Well, I think you need to know your data. I need, if the challenge with marketing is that everybody will promise you the world. I'll get you on the first page of Google. They make you all these promises, but the question is it really happening? And the only way you're going to know is if you have internal data. I never trust the data of marketing companies. I had a guy who sold me a website, and he was telling me about all these hits that my website was getting. And when I became sophisticated enough to start digging into it, what I realized is that half of them were Russian bots. And they didn't put any money in my pocket. And at the end of the day, marketing is about getting you customers that are qualified for your services. So I think that's the most important thing, how you market, whether it's social media, through paid advertising. I mean, there's a lot of different brands, and it really depends on what you need. And just understand that it changes. Google changes its analytics, and everything changes. So you got to have that internal data. I think that's the place to start.
Yeah, that's a good point. Track, test, and change. Change what's not working, keep what is. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
On marketing, it is a common misconception, I think, in downturns. One of the first expense line items to be cut is marketing and advertising. But there's a lot of studies that show those that double down, like you did, in those troughs, really come out the other side very, very strong, got a bit more market share.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. It's about getting enough of the market share so that you have the ability to say no to clients that you don't want. And we built, we got ourselves to the point where we say no more often than we say yes, we would like to represent you.
Yeah.
And boy, that saves you a lot of headaches down the road.
Shit, yeah. It's a great position to be in. It took me a long time to get to that kind of mindset and understanding. How did you?
It takes a lot of courage to say no.
Yeah.
To people who walk in the door with money.
How did you fund the business?
Through the sweat of my brow, man. It was a lot of it was not taking a big salary. I took a pay cut. Saving as much money as you possibly can. I mean, as a lawyer, and there's many businesses, there's, two ways to take income. One is a salary, and the IRS kind of requires you to take some kind of a salary. But then there's also that profit, and then you can take advantage of that. So I used Mike Michalowicz's Profit First book as the guideline for how we set up our accounting. And by the time I sold the firm, I was putting 7% of every dollar that came in the door into a profit account.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah. And so you can do the math on what that is.
Yeah, yeah. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
That's a tough question. I think being a lawyer it can be very, very profitable. So I'm not going to discourage people from doing that. But for me, I did it for 37 years. I want to do something else. It's much more challenging today than it was, because going to law school, I think, cost me $8,000 a year, which seemed like a lot in the 80s. But I bought a house and then I refinanced it and paid it off. As opposed to people who are, hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans. So it's a different industry. And I think you got to look at that from the perspective of, if you're a new lawyer right out of law school, it's going to take you a long time to just get back to zero. So, there's easier ways to make money. I would say that. I think I might take a different path if I had to do it all over again.
There's something I read last year, the real uptake of AI, the progress it's making. One of the first industries apparently to be desecrated is law. Something like 70% of the legal jobs will be replaced with AI, apparently.
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen. But I will tell you, technology did change the industry. I mean, when I got out of law school in 1985, nobody went out on their own, because you had to have books and there was no computers, and you had to have a secretary to type everything up on an electric typewriter. Now you can literally run your firm with your cell phone out of your car.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's the best way to do things, but technically it is possible. Now, will some robot, be able to go into trial and convince a jury of, whether somebody did something or not? I don't know that's a leap that will happen, but we'll see.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges was the uncertainty. When I didn't have the data, before I started collecting data and really measuring, because you can't grow what you don't measure, right? So before I started measuring, it would be that uncertainty. And I'd be laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where the rent was going to come from, because I really had nothing in place. But after, we started to measure the data and we started to see what was working, you could be pretty comfortable to know that there was going to be a certain amount of leads that were going to come in, a certain amount of clients were going to come out of that. The math was going to work. And, while there's always ups and downs, the trend's been very good. So it was the uncertainty of what was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm very much a data guy, and I love that adage: what can be measured can be managed.
Yeah.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think the single thing was money management, and the understanding that just because it came into your bank account doesn't mean you get to spend it. And that's what Michalowicz really talks about. I think I had 8 bank accounts. I had money spread out everywhere. I had a payroll account, a profit account, and a tax account, and an expense account. And that way, at any given moment, I knew exactly where I was. I knew what the payroll was going to be in 2 weeks, and I knew how close I was to it. I think the mistake a lot of people make is they put all their money in one account. That account looks rather fat. They think they're doing really well, but what they don't realize is that money's already been spent, and you can get yourself in a lot of trouble that way, especially with your taxes if you're not setting that stuff aside.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
The hiring and firing thing is always challenging. I hate firing people. But again, you have to have the data to tell you, is this person performing? And then there's the struggle of finding new people, and weeding through them. It's made a lot easier. I will say this: over the years, it got easier because I got clearer on what exactly it was I wanted, as opposed to, having a utility player, someone who just seemed to be good at, could do everything. We are very specific on, this is the task that this job has. This is what we need. and that made it easier.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The freedom of well, one part of it is the accomplishment. They get to $1 million was a big deal for me. And then to do it again and then again and then again, that was really, to prove that I could. And then I like helping people. I mean, I think the job that we do is really important. People get themselves in trouble for a whole variety of reasons, and the folks that we can help and get them either sober or deal with the trauma that they're dealing with, or just out of trouble in and of itself. I mean, all that's very rewarding.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think the biggest mindset change for me came when I went from owning a law firm to owning a business that provided legal services. And when I separated myself out, it was Chastaine Law, and it was sort of like my persona. And when I separated it out and said, okay, this is a corporation, it's a separate entity from me. One, that opened the door for the ability to sell it, and two, I had to treat it as an entity, so I had to make sure that it individually was profitable, that it was doing well, above and beyond the money that I was making.
The number one habit you think a small business? Sorry, go. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the things that I teach is that when you're a business owner, you have a fiduciary duty to your stockholders, even if you're the only stockholder. So, yeah, that mindset changed things.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
It's a lot of little habits. There's not just one. I mean, if I were to say, one, it would be to read. For a lawyer, the larger your base of knowledge, the better off you're going to be. You got to understand how to, science, you got to understand people, you got to understand a lot of different things. So reading is the 15-minute a day thing that you could do that would really make a big difference. The other thing that I would say, probably the single most overlooked secret weapon to peak performance is sleep.
Yeah.
You got to get enough sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, your performance is going to suffer.
Yep, absolutely. I'm cranky as fuck when I haven't had 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, I was a expedition length adventure racer and would, race for 22 hours a day, almost virtually nonstop. I know about sleep deprivation. It is not a good thing. Your brain just doesn't work.
No. Want to become the best manager you can be? Check out our Kick-Ass Manager course at growasmallbusiness.com. Do the course and add your fellow managers for no extra cost. Join the 30%. 70% of people quit their job because of their manager. Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I think for a long time when I was hiring people, I was just trying to get, utility players, the best person, that could do a variety of different things. When I began to be really clear on what the job required, so like we have a person who answers our phones, that's all she does. And, so when we hired her, we were looking for someone who had that voice, that, that bubbly personality that would be the face of the firm. As opposed to someone who could also do legal research. She doesn't do any of that. So we got really, really clear on what each position required. And then that's what we went and looked for. And once you know what it is that you're looking for, it becomes much more obvious that they either have it or they don't have it. So that was a big mistake. I read Traction by Gene Wickman.
I've literally just finished that yesterday.
Yeah, he talks about having the right people in the right seat, right? And that was that's when I began to really look at, what was the culture of our firm, what was our key, um, our core values, got those written down, and then from that, the rest of the verbiage kind of comes up. Your advertisement sort of writes itself.
Yep. Well, that's the next question. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, so it's always going to start with you as the owner, right? Whatever you do, you can't expect people to do more than you'll ever do. So if you want to have a culture of hard work, you've got to put the hours in. And so you set the tone for everything. I think that's really important. And part of that is just learning how to set that tone without doing everything, without micromanaging. When you hire somebody, trust them enough to actually do their job. Business owners, especially small business owners, I think are the cork in the bottle 9 times out of 10. If they just got out of the way and let people do their thing, they'd be better off. And realize that, you're not an expert on everything. So other people will come up with better ways to do it than, certainly than I would have ever thought of. And then you just have to adjust. Well, yeah, I wasn't going to do it that way, but I like that idea. Let's go with that. So give people, be willing to delegate and let go and let people do their job.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Well, balance is kind of a funny word because there is no real balance, right? It's not 50-50. There are times when you got to put your nose to the grindstone and work your ass off. And then there's times that you got to relax. And here's what I would say, that the key to balance is taking this stupid phone and locking it in the drawer.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. Don't be a slave to everybody who's got your email address or your phone number or your Facebook page or your WhatsApp. Control your own time. And I think that changed my life when I started treating that phone as a tool.
Yeah.
Just like I don't use a hammer for everything, that phone doesn't, live with me. So.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Obviously a shitload on the legal side of things, but just outside of that, as a business owner, I guess, is more to the point.
I spent well in excess of $250,000 learning how to run this business, with mentors. I mean, so that would be, my word to the wise is don't be afraid to invest. You gotta be willing to spend money, and find people that are interested in your success, and it will speed things along. I mean, you can make all the mistakes yourself if you want, but that's the slow boat. If you want to do things faster, learn from other people's mistakes, and that just takes an investment, both of time and money. You just got to be willing to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. So you've had mentors. Have you had coaches along the way, or you see them really both as the same thing?
I kind of treat them all as the same. I mean, I had coaches as an athlete over many years, mentors, coaches. I mean, basically it's somebody that you can, give a call to and say, hey, this is my problem. This is what's going on. What do you think I should do? Talk me off the ledge, and then you take into consideration their advice, and then you make your own decision.
Yep. Did you have a board of directors or advisors for the business?
No, my wife was the office manager. She went to most of the seminars, things. So she knew everything that was going on. She was there from, day one. And so she, for the most part, we would run things by her. I also, in this group that I was with, we had a mastermind group that spoke every Friday. And so, I would get to learn from other people's experiences and run my own problems. So I had a pretty good network of folks that I could, run things by and get suggestions.
Now, Mike, you're one of the few we've had on that has exited a business. Any other advice for the audience thinking about it, or that they should be thinking about it from your experience?
Well, so in my opinion, the ability to sell a business requires exactly the same information that running the business properly does. And if you think of that business as a separate entity and you're the sole stockholder, how would you sell stock to someone else? Say, hey, I want you to invest my business or buy in my business. And that requires you to have the data to show that year in and year out, the systems that you have actually work. And the proof really was in the pudding. Not only the guy who purchased my firm, he'll do, if he doesn't hit $1 million, he's going to be really, really close first year out of the gate. But the even more important thing is that not a single employee left. Everybody stayed, which, new employees cost money. And so that saved him a ton of money. And it also, showed that the culture and the systems work.
Yeah.
And, people bought into those. So, yeah, I think that's, selling something like that you build from scratch is hard. But if you separate yourself and realize that it runs without me, now you have an asset that, is valuable to somebody else. And, in my case, 37 years of practice, and I'm ready to do something else. So, but, that goodwill and all of that stuff and what I've learned, I don't want that to just fade away.
All right, Mike, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
I think in the very beginning, it's doubt and uncertainty and fear. Where's the money going to come from? Where are the clients going to come from? Second guessing yourself. And that's why out of the gate, getting a mentor, if you wait till you can afford a mentor, you're probably way behind the 8 ball. I mean, when we started investing in that, we were broke.
Yep.
We just found a way to make it all work. So yeah, I would think that's the hardest part is you just got to have the confidence to keep pushing forward. And, one of the ways to fuel that is, of course, is to know where you're trying to go. What is the end game? What's the goal? And then stay focused on that. And the doors will start to open for you.
Yeah, I think the operative word there, both for, sorry, I've just faded out. Sorry. Yep, got it. Yeah, I think the operative word you just said there, both for, sorry. I think the operative word you just said there, both for mentoring and marketing a while ago, it's an investment. So you've really got to put that money down because you will get a return.
Right. And you need to know that you're getting a return, and that's why you measure it. And there's nothing better than having, 30 time return. You spend $1, you get $30, man. I mean, that's like, yeah, I'm a genius. I got that going. But don't make the mistake of thinking that it will always be that way. You got to keep measuring it because things change. And so, you got to adjust.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Well, I almost always say Profit First by Mike McCallowis because it changed our accounting system. But the E-Myth, and specifically the E-Myth for lawyers, but any of the E-Myth books were really valuable. Traction was excellent. And then the other thing that I thought was really important to me is I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan. And so Tribe of Mentors and what's the other one? Tools of Titans, where you get to see what other successful people do and you start to see the commonalities of what do most successful people do. And, then you try to mirror that. And again, that's part of mentoring, right? I don't know Tim. I've never met him, but man, he has helped me with a lot of decisions.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
I listen to a lot of podcasts, lawyer podcasts in particular, because for me, it's a little bit like a mastermind. I get to hear another lawyer's journey and story and where they made mistakes and go, oh, this is what I would have done in that situation, and keep it fresh. So, it's a real valuable use of a half hour of driving as opposed to listening to the news, which is going to be shitty from the get-go. So
that's right. Exactly. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think the biggest tool is, and I think it's the most important, is to have a system. And I think that system is, a lot of times, it's a lot of Get a good calculator. You got to know your numbers.
Yeah.
And, I think being intimate with those numbers, I will often take the numbers and I will write them on a piece of paper and break them all down and divide them up in a million different ways, trying to find different things that matter, for different practice areas or different lead sources. So, I think that's there's a million tools out there. My warning would be, don't let the tools run you.
Final and my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 15 years ago?
Oh, well, hindsight being 2020, I'd say, hey, it's going to work. Don't lose so much sleep over this is going to work. And I wish I had done a lot of the things sooner. I wish I'd have read some of the books sooner. I wish I'd have invested in mentoring sooner. I wish I just would have accelerated things a little bit, but I wound up where I wanted to wind up, and so that was all good.
Great. Thanks very much for your time today, Mike. Really enjoyed the chat. Congratulations to you and your wife and the wider team selling out last year after 14 years, growing it from just yourself up to 8 FTE and obviously helping people in law as well. So congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it, Troy. Thank you.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcasts to help with their growth will find us.